The invitations had been sent weeks ago, carefully crafted with soft cream paper and delicate lavender scent, each one folded by hand as if I were sealing a message of love and nostalgia. But beneath the surface of sweetness there was a quiet storm brewing, a storm that had been gathering for years as I watched my son Alex grow from a curious, bright-eyed boy into a young man unaware of the history that clung to the walls of his childhood home, the same walls that had once echoed with laughter and scraped knees now held the weight of memories both beautiful and bitter. As I moved through the familiar rooms arranging the balloons and ribbons that would greet our guests with an illusion of joy, each corner had been meticulously prepared, each detail designed to charm and enchant. Yet beneath the pastel decorations there was a secret that only I knew, a secret that would shift the balance of power on this day that was meant to celebrate new life and promise for my family. The garden outside bloomed in early spring colors, pinks and blues stretching across the lawn like a painting as the sunlight touched the roses that had been planted decades ago by my own hands and now seemed to smile with silent approval for what I was about to do. The house smelled faintly of fresh paint and baking bread, a comforting aroma that masked the tension beneath every step I took. Each room seemed to whisper stories from the past, stories of birthday parties and late-night storytelling, of scraped knees and whispered secrets, of laughter shared with friends who had now become ghosts in my memory. And of course there was the betrayal that had carved deep grooves in my heart, that had turned joy into suspicion and left scars that no balm could heal. My once best friend Lily, the woman I had trusted with every secret, every hope, and every dream, had turned her back on me for her own selfish desires, taking my husband and leaving me to navigate the ruins of a life I had thought was secure. I remembered the nights I had cried silently in the dark, the cold emptiness of the bed beside me, the way the walls seemed to close in and mock my sorrow. I remembered the false smiles and hollow congratulations that Lily had offered, the way she had paraded her victories in front of me as if to remind me of my helplessness. And still, despite the pain I had endured, I had waited, and I had planned a day that would be mine, a day that would turn betrayal into triumph and heartbreak into sweet satisfaction. I had learned that revenge was not about cruelty, but about reclaiming what was stolen and restoring the dignity that had been stripped away. I moved through the kitchen, setting up the table with fine china and crystal glasses, each one catching the light and refracting it into soft rainbows across the room. The table was laid for celebration, but also for revelation, for on this day I would not only honor the new life that was about to enter our family, but I would also announce a change that would shake the foundations of those who had wronged me. The neighbors had been curious, asking questions about the decorations, about the flowers, and I had smiled and told them only that it was a simple family gathering. They had no idea that the house itself would become the instrument of my long-awaited justice. My son Alex had been running through the hallways, chasing his own laughter and excitement, oblivious to the layers of history in the walls around him, his tiny footsteps a rhythm that carried both innocence and joy, the very essence of life that I had fought to protect. In the wake of betrayal, I watched him pause at the staircase, the sunlight catching in his hair as he peered down at the garden where the balloons swayed gently in the breeze. I felt a pang of tenderness mixed with determination, for I loved him more than anything, and yet this love had shaped the very revenge I now orchestrated. The house had once been a sanctuary, and now it would be a stage where the past and future would collide in a way that only I could control. I thought of the guests who would arrive soon, some unaware of the past, some bearing their own memories of friendship and family. The air was thick with anticipation, and the scent of flowers and baking bread mingled with the faint aroma of polished wood and paint. It was a heady combination, a mix of nostalgia and expectation that mirrored my own internal storm. I moved to the living room, adjusting the streamers, making sure each balloon floated perfectly in place. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden light on the polished floors, and I could feel the weight of the house as if it were alive and aware of the secret it held. I paused in front of the mantelpiece where photographs of birthdays and family vacations stood frozen in time, smiling faces forever captured in glossy frames. I touched one gently, a photo of Alex at his 3rd birthday cake, his chubby hands smeared with frosting, and I felt both sorrow and triumph, for the house had witnessed his growth and my pain. It had absorbed my tears and my laughter alike, and now it would bear witness to the moment when I would reclaim what was mine. I glanced toward the front door, imagining Lily arriving in her usual fashion, fashionably late, confident and unaware of the shift that would take place. I remembered the hurtful words she had whispered behind my back, the smiles she had shared with others as if conspiring against me, and I allowed myself a quiet smile of satisfaction, for this day would be different. I would remain composed, graceful, smiling warmly as though nothing had happened, yet every word, every gesture had been carefully planned to convey celebration and warmth while delivering the revelation that would leave a mark. I thought of My own heart beating in my chest, the mixture of nerves and exhilaration I felt was intoxicating. I knew that in a few hours the house would transform from a mere residence into a monument to my resilience, to my ability to endure and overcome the betrayal that had once threatened to shatter me. I thought of the cake, the centerpiece of the reveal, adorned with pastel icing and delicate flowers, each detail chosen with care. The moment I would step forward with microphone in hand and deliver the news of the house sale would be both liberating and sweetly satisfying. The house would no longer belong to the shadows of the past, but would become a symbol of the strength I had forged in fire and tears, and I knew that Alex would sense my resolve even if he did not understand the intricacies of adult betrayal. I felt the weight of time and memory pressing in as I continued to arrange decorations, to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of birds outside the windows. The morning passed in a haze of preparation and anticipation, the air thick with unspoken promises and silent oaths made to myself to never again allow anyone to diminish my worth, to never again let betrayal define the limits of my life. The house was alive with history, with love, with pain, and now it would witness my triumph as I poured tea into delicate cups and arranged plates of pastries. I felt a strange calm settle over me, a sense of inevitability that the reveal would come to pass exactly as planned. I glanced at the clock, the minutes slipping by like grains of sand, and I felt the tension coiling and uncoiling in my chest, a mixture of dread and excitement. I moved from room to room, adjusting and readjusting decorations as if ensuring that every corner of the house reflected the duality of memory and future, of sorrow and joy. The walls themselves seemed to hum with anticipation, and I knew that by the end of this day the house would no longer merely shelter us, it would speak a story of resilience, a story of reclamation, and above all a story of love, the kind of love that transforms pain into purpose and betrayal into sweetly earned justice. And as I stood in the grand hallway watching the sunlight dance across the floorboards and the balloons sway gently in the breeze, I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that the day had begun, that the stage was set, that the past and present were poised to collide, and that when Alex's laughter mingled with the revelations of the day, he would witness not only a celebration of new life, but the quiet triumph of a mother who had endured and prevailed. And I smiled softly, knowing that every painstaking detail, every careful arrangement, every hidden intention had brought me to this moment, a moment suspended between memory and future, between loss and reclamation, a moment that would define not only the house, but the woman who had built it and endured its betrayals. And I whispered to myself a silent vow that no one would ever underestimate me again, and that this house and this day would forever remain etched in memory as the day when love and justice intertwined. And for the first time in years I allowed myself to feel truly powerful and truly free, and in that freedom there was both peace and sweet satisfaction. The guests began arriving one by one, their laughter and voices filling the familiar halls of the house with a warmth that contrasted sharply with the storm that brewed quietly beneath the surface. I greeted each person with a smile that was both genuine and carefully measured, the kind of smile that concealed thoughts too sharp to share their curiosity about the decorations. The pastel balloons, the ribbons dancing in the spring breeze only added to the anticipation that hummed through the rooms, and yet none of them knew that beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary gathering lay a carefully orchestrated plan. The house that had once been a sanctuary of childhood innocence and maternal love had now become the stage for a revelation that would shake the very foundation of relationships long thought stable. I moved among the guests with practiced grace, offering tea and pastries, engaging in light conversation while my mind catalogued every interaction, every subtle gesture, every twitch of a smile or furrow of a brow. Nothing escaped me, and all of it would serve my purpose. For this was not merely a celebration of life and family, but a meticulous dance of perception and truth. The air was thick with perfume, laughter, and the faint scent of baking bread mingling with the polished wood floors and soft sunlight streaming through the windows, and each moment heightened my awareness of the coming confrontation, for I knew she would arrive. Lily, the woman whose betrayal had once shattered my life, whose laughter had once echoed cruelly in the corridors of my mind, whose presence I had learned to anticipate like the approach of a storm. She would arrive late as always, fashionably confident and self-assured, unaware that the tides had shifted and that I now controlled the narrative that day would be hers to witness as a lesson in humility and restraint. I recalled vividly the countless nights I had lain awake, haunted by the betrayal, by the whispers, by the cruel smiles and false triumphs that Lily had paraded in front of me as if to prove my insignificance. Yet in those long months of anguish I had built a quiet resolve, a strength that had lain dormant but was now fully awake, a resolve that would manifest today in a manner both elegant and devastating. I moved to the living room, adjusting the balloons, ensuring that the streamers caught the light just so the cake on the table adorned with pastel flowers symbolizing both new life and finality awaited the moment of revelation, a symbol of transformation and reclamation. And as I watched Alex running through the rooms delighting in the joy of the day, I felt a mixture of tenderness and steel, knowing that his innocence would remain untouched even as the adults around him were forced to confront truths they had long avoided. The chatter of guests created a rhythm that mingled with the subtle music playing in the background, creating an almost surreal atmosphere, one that mirrored the duality of the day, the simultaneous celebration of life and impending confrontation. I sipped my tea, noticing how neighbors and distant relatives mingled, sharing stories and laughter, unaware that every smile, every greeting, every handshake would soon be underscored by a revelation that would leave them reeling in quiet astonishment. And yet, even as I moved among them, offering warm words and polite gestures, my mind remained focused on Lily, imagining the precise moment of her arrival, the way she would step through the front door, adjusting her hair, glancing around the room with that calculated confidence, and the sharp intake of breath that would inevitably follow my announcement. The anticipation was intoxicating, a mixture of dread, excitement, and the satisfaction of long-planned justice. Each step I took, each word I spoke to my guests, was a careful weave of normalcy and subtle dominance, a demonstration that I was in control, that the past no longer dictated my present nor my future. And I watched as Alex paused to show a guest a drawing he had made earlier, a colorful chaos of crayons and imagination, and I felt a swell of pride, knowing that this day was as much about his happiness as it was about my reclaiming of agency over my own life. The hallways seemed to breathe with the rhythm of preparation and memory, each photograph on the walls, each birthday decoration, each memento of joy and pain contributing to the story that was about to unfold. I imagined Lily's eyes upon seeing the familiar spaces that had once been hers to manipulate, and how she would perceive the transformation, how every smile she had once earned through deceit would now be met with quiet dignity and unwavering resolve. I glanced toward the front door, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. The anticipation of confrontation hung like a tangible force in the air, a force that I had cultivated over years of careful planning, observation, and patience. And as I continued to circulate among the guests, offering small reassurances and gentle humor, I felt a sense of control that was both exhilarating and deeply satisfying. The contrast between the laughter of the unaware and the storm that was approaching created a tension so thick it could almost be felt in the walls themselves. I moved to adjust a ribbon on the staircase banister, and as I did, I caught sight of Lily in the driveway, stepping out of her car, her posture confident, her expression composed, her eyes scanning the scene as though assessing the terrain for any sign of weakness. I felt a flicker of satisfaction, knowing that her perception of power was about to be challenged, that the carefully constructed facade she had relied on for years would crumble beneath the weight of truth and revelation. And yet I maintained my composure, greeting her with warmth, guiding her through the rooms, recounting past events with a tone of gentle nostalgia that belied the storm to come. I spoke of birthdays and family vacations, of simple moments of laughter and joy, and all the while her presence ignited a spark of controlled anticipation within me. I noticed her eyes linger on photographs on the mantelpiece, lingering just a moment too long on images that captured moments of happiness, and yet she failed to perceive the underlying shift that had taken place within the walls and within me. Every step I had taken, every detail I had arranged was designed to convey normalcy, warmth, and maternal grace. While preparing the perfect moment for revelation, I observed the subtle cues of her discomfort as she adjusted her stance and smiled politely at guests, noticing how the cake on the table seemed to anchor the room with its delicate beauty, its symbolism not lost on me, for it represented not only new life but also transformation, the past being honored and yet released all in one delicate gesture. I moved to the kitchen, checking once more that everything was in place, the glasses aligned, the tea brewed to perfection, the pastries arranged in aesthetically pleasing patterns, the subtle notes of music providing an undercurrent of calm and expectation. And as I moved, I felt the hum of the house around me, each room a witness to both past joys and imminent revelations. I thought of the years I had spent rebuilding my life after betrayal, of the nights spent planning this day of delicate retribution, of the meticulous attention to detail that would make the revelation both poignant and memorable. And as I returned to the living room, my eyes caught Alex's laughter echoing through the hallways, a pure, untainted joy that contrasted sharply with the complex layers of adult emotion swirling around him. I felt a protective surge mixed with a fierce determination to ensure that he would emerge from the day unharmed by the shadows of the past that Lily carried with her. I knew that when the announcement came, the shock and surprise would ripple through the adults, but Alex would see only my strength, my calm, my unwavering love, and the assertion of boundaries that betrayal had once ignored. And I continued to circulate among the guests, exchanging pleasantries and Subtle barbs of truth hidden in casual conversation, each word chosen with precision, each gesture calculated to maintain the illusion of a normal celebratory gathering while planting seeds of awareness that the time for reckoning was near. I felt the tension building like a tightly coiled spring ready to release. The moment was approaching when the laughter and light conversation would be interrupted by a single declaration, a declaration that would shift the atmosphere of the house from one of innocent celebration to one charged with revelation and reckoning. The walls seemed to hum in anticipation, reflecting the duality of the day, the warmth of family and friends, and the simmering undercurrent of confrontation. I glanced once more at the door and saw Lily adjusting her hair, glancing around, taking in the scene with that air of entitlement that had once intimidated me, now replaced by subtle apprehension that I could sense even if she could not express. I felt a quiet smile touch my lips. The culmination of years of planning, patience, and endurance would unfold in moments, and every detail I had so carefully prepared would serve to magnify the impact of my revelation. The guests continued their chatter, their laughter a soundtrack to the tension building silently in the corners of the room, and I moved to the staircase, running my hand over the polished banister, feeling the texture of history under my fingers, the weight of memories past and the promise of justice present flowing through me. I knew that the moment would arrive soon. The house would witness the intersection of innocence and awareness, the past and the present, the betrayed and the triumphant. And as I watched Alex show his drawing to a neighbor, explaining the details with enthusiasm, I felt a surge of love and protection and satisfaction, for the day was set, the stage was prepared, and soon the carefully maintained balance of normalcy and revelation would tip, and I would stand not as the victim of betrayal but as the orchestrator of my own destiny. And in that anticipation I felt the intoxicating mix of power and peace, knowing that every careful step, every word and gesture had brought me to this precise moment, the moment when the house itself would become a testament to resilience, endurance, and the quiet but undeniable triumph of a woman who had been wronged and yet refused to be defined by the actions of others. And as I moved through the rooms, greeting guests, adjusting decorations, smiling warmly at Lily, and engaging with Alex, I felt the tension tighten like a living thing coiling around my chest, and I knew that the next few minutes would change everything, and the story that had begun with laughter and nostalgia would evolve into one of revelation, transformation, and sweetly earned satisfaction. And as the sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the balloons and ribbons, the warmth of the day mingling with the weight of history, I stood ready, poised and calm, knowing that the moment of reckoning had arrived, and the house would bear witness to my strength, my patience, and the quiet but unmistakable power of a mother who had endured betrayal and now prepared to claim her victory in a manner both elegant and unforgettable. The moment had finally arrived, the room buzzing with laughter, chatter, and the faint scent of fresh flowers mingling with the aroma of baked goods and polished with a delicate harmony of celebration and anticipation. And I held the microphone in my hands, feeling the weight of years of planning, preparation, and quiet revenge coiling in my chest, each heartbeat echoing with the rhythm of both excitement and resolve. My gaze swept across the faces of the guests, their smiles and expressions oblivious to the storm that was about to unfold. Alex was in the center of the room, his eyes wide with curiosity, joy radiating from his every movement, unaware of the history hidden in the walls of the house that had cradled his childhood memories and yet had also witnessed my suffering and pain. And there she was, Lily, standing near the back, adjusting her posture with a grace that had once intimidated me but now only ignited a quiet satisfaction in my heart, a satisfaction born of patience, endurance, and meticulous planning. Her eyes flicked over the decorations, the balloons, the pastel ribbons dancing in the breeze. She smiled politely at the neighbors, at the friends, at everyone around her, unaware that she was about to be confronted with the truth she had long evaded. And I felt a surge of power coursing through me, a power that was not born of malice but of reclamation, of dignity and justice. For too long her betrayal had lingered in the corners of my mind, shaping my sleepless nights and stolen peace, but now every detail, every smile, every word I had carefully prepared had converged to this single moment. The music swelled softly in the background, laughter continued to echo around me, voices overlapping in a chaotic harmony that contrasted with the meticulous calm I projected, and yet every fiber of my being was poised to deliver a revelation that would resonate in every mind present. And I spoke softly, at first my voice calm, steady, warm, as if sharing a secret with the room at large, and then I allowed the words to carry the weight of history, the years of betrayal and the triumph of patience and endurance. And I said, this house, the house that has sheltered Alex from the first steps to the brightest birthdays, the house that has witnessed scraped knees and scraped hearts, the house that has absorbed laughter and tears alike, is no longer just a home. It is a symbol of life lived, love given, and battles endured. And I paused, letting the words settle across the room, letting eyes turn toward me, absorbing the subtle gravity of the moment. I saw Lily's expression change, just the faintest hint of confusion flashing across her carefully maintained mask, the corners of her eyes twitching almost imperceptibly as though sensing the shift that was about to upend her sense of control, and I continued, my voice firm yet tinged with emotion as I spoke of love and family, of memories both beautiful and bitter of the past that had shaped us all, and yet of the present moment in which power shifts and truths are laid bare. And then I delivered the news, the revelation that had been the culmination of months of careful planning and quiet resolve. "I am putting this house on the market," I said, each word deliberate, measured, and final. The room fell silent. The chatter ceased. The music seemed to fade into the background. Even the laughter of Alex, who had been running to show a drawing to a neighbor, halted midair as all eyes turned toward me, and Lily's face went pale, her perfect mask cracking under the weight of the unexpected announcement. Her lips parted in disbelief, her hands clutching the strap of her designer handbag as if to steady herself, and I smiled softly, gently, a motherly smile filled with both tenderness and the satisfaction of justice finally served. And the room remained still as the guests absorbed the shock. The murmurs began softly at first, the neighbors exchanging surprised glances, friends whispering questions to one another, all trying to reconcile the joyous occasion with the unexpected revelation. The air was thick with tension, anticipation, and awe, and I watched Lily struggling to maintain composure, to mask the shock that she could not fully contain, the realization that her carefully cultivated sense of superiority and control had been quietly dismantled before her very eyes. And yet I remained calm, composed, projecting warmth and grace as though the announcement were simply an extension of the celebration rather than a declaration of reclaimed agency and empowerment. The cake sat on the table, adorned with pastel flowers, a symbol of both new life and the end of old shadows, and I gestured toward it, my hand steady, my posture confident, signaling that the moment was complete, that the stage had been set, that the house now belonged to the future, not the ghosts of betrayal. And as I continued to speak softly of change, transformation, and resilience, I could see the ripple effect across the room, guests whispering quietly, nodding and understanding, some curious, others astonished, and Lily's eyes locked on mine, and for a moment our gaze held a silent conversation, a conversation that needed no words. She understood that the era of manipulation had ended, that the balance of power had shifted irreversibly, and I felt a thrill of satisfaction that was neither cruel nor petty, but deeply just and long awaited, a satisfaction that had been honed through years of patience, careful planning, and the cultivation of strength from pain. I watched as Alex, oblivious to the adult complexities unfolding around him, ran to hug me with pure, innocent joy, and in that embrace I felt the culmination of all my efforts, the perfect blend of maternal love and the satisfaction of standing tall in the face of betrayal. The guests began to adjust to the announcement, murmurs growing into quiet discussions, the tension slowly giving way to a mix of astonishment and respect, and I continued, speaking softly, reminding everyone that life moves forward, that memories are precious but not chains, and that the house, which had been both sanctuary and witness, would now be a chapter closed and a symbol of resilience, a transformation both literal and symbolic. And Lily, still pale and rigid, could not interrupt. She could only watch as the room absorbed the shift, and I felt the quiet power of knowing that I had achieved my purpose without losing my grace or my composure, that I had transformed a moment of betrayal into one of liberation and affirmation, that strength could be gentle and justice could be elegant, and the weight of years of suffering lifted slightly from my shoulders. The sunlight streaming through the windows caught and the balloons and ribbons mirrored the clarity I felt inside, a lightness of spirit that came from finally asserting control over the narrative of my life. The walls of the house seemed to echo my triumph, carrying it softly into every corner, every room, every memory stored within them, and the realization that I could face betrayal and emerge not only intact but empowered filled me with a sense of completion, a sense of satisfaction deeper than any revenge could have offered alone. It was the culmination of endurance, patience, planning, and love. And I turned to Lily one final time, a quiet acknowledgement in my eyes, a gentle but unmistakable signal that the past had ended and the future belonged to me and to Alex. And as the guests began to resume their celebration with a new understanding of the day, a blend of joy and contemplation, I felt the deep resonance of the moment, the perfect intertwining of past pain, present resolution, and future promise. And in that room filled with laughter, whispers, and the delicate scent of flowers, I knew that the revelation had achieved exactly what it was meant to do. It had reclaimed dignity, restored control, and asserted the enduring power of love and resilience. It had turned a space of memories into a stage of liberation, and for the first time in years I felt the complete quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had not only survived betrayal but had transformed it into a moment of sweet enduring victory. And I allowed myself a deep breath, a smile that was both tender and triumphant, and I knew that when Alex ran to show a drawing again, or when guests quietly reflected on the day, they would carry with them the story of not just a celebration but of a mother who endured betrayal with grace, reclaimed her power, and transformed heartbreak into a moment of undeniable and beautifully earned triumph. The last of the guests had departed, leaving the house quiet except for the faint echoes of laughter and whispers that had filled the rooms earlier, and I walked through the hallways, each step deliberate, each footfall a gentle affirmation that the day had ended exactly as I had planned. The balloons that had once danced in the breeze now sagged softly in the corners, the pastel ribbons draped across the staircase and mantels shimmered faintly in the late afternoon sunlight, and I felt a profound sense of completion, a mixture of relief, satisfaction, and serenity. ACI moved through the rooms, touching familiar surfaces. The polished wood of the banister, the smooth countertops in the kitchen, the worn edges of door frames that had borne witness to every moment of joy, sorrow, and betrayal. I paused in the living room where the cake had sat, the centerpiece of the reveal, now a memory of laughter and astonishment, and I allowed myself to reflect on the events of the day, the way each guest had reacted, the quiet shock on Lily's face, the murmurs that had rippled through the room like gentle waves, all of it confirming the precision and effectiveness of the plan I had so carefully orchestrated. The house had transformed from a place of childhood innocence to a stage of liberation, a symbol of resilience, empowerment. As I gazed at the photographs on the mantel, the smiling faces of Alex in every stage of his life frozen in glossy perfection, I felt a swell of maternal pride mixed with the satisfaction of finally reclaiming agency over my own life. The years of betrayal, the nights spent crying in solitude, the doubts and fears that had once weighed so heavily on my shoulder, all of it seemed to dissipate in golden light streaming through windows. The past had been acknowledged, the pain had been honored, and yet it no longer had the power to define me or my future. I moved to kitchen, pouring myself a glass of wine, the rich aroma of red mingling with the lingering scent of pastries and tea, a comforting grounding presence as I felt tension of day slowly release from my body. The walls around me seemed to hum softly as if approving the transformation that had taken place within and around me. I wandered to the garden where Alex had played earlier, the soft grass under my feet, the faint fragrance of roses, and the gentle sway of trees in the breeze, a reminder of the simple beauty of life and the joy of the present moment. I imagined the future, the house in the hands of strangers, the memories preserved only in photographs, recollection, and I felt a sense of liberation was both profound and exhilarating. I was no longer bound by the shadows of the past nor by the manipulations of those who had sought to diminish me. I had asserted my strength with grace and dignity, and in doing so I had created a story of endurance and triumph that would remain with me long after house had been sold. I thought of Lily and the subtle but undeniable shift in power that she had witnessed, the realization that her carefully constructed sense of superiority had been quietly dismantled, and I allowed myself a small smile, not of malice but of quiet satisfaction, a recognition that justice had been achieved in the most elegant and controlled manner possible. And as I walked through the hallways, observing the remnants of the party, the half-empty glasses, the scattered ribbons, the faint footprints of guests long gone, I felt a deep connection to journey that had brought me here, the transformation from pain to empowerment, the reclamation of dignity, the assertion of control over my own life. I realized that this house had become more than a mere residence. It had become a testament to resilience, a monument to endurance, a canvas upon which I had painted the intricate layers of grief, triumph, and liberation. I paused at the staircase where Alex had often run to show me his latest drawing or idea, and I could almost hear his laughter echoing softly in the empty hallways, a reminder life continues, joy persists, and innocence endures even amid complexities of adult struggle. I thought of the months and years that had led to this day, the meticulous planning, the quiet patience, careful orchestration of every detail to ensure that revelation would be both impactful and dignified. I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from seeing a plan unfold perfectly, a plan born not of cruelty but of a desire to reclaim what had been lost, to betrayal, to assert the strength of a heart that refuses to be broken. And I moved to the front door, pausing to run my hand along the smooth wood surface, feeling the history absorbed in its grains, the memories of birthdays, holidays, celebrations, and sorrows, all held within a space that had now been transformed into vessel of liberation and empowerment. I opened the door, letting the cool evening air wash over me, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and the promise of new beginnings, and I imagined the house in the hands of a new family, a new chapter being written within these walls, a future untouched by the shadows of past, and I felt a sense of peace, a recognition the cycle of life continues, that joy and sorrow coexist, strength can be forged through endurance, and love can transform even deepest wounds into sources of profound empowerment. I thought of Alex again, joy in his eyes, the innocence in his laughter, the unconditional love he offered without hesitation, and I felt the protective, maternal pride had guided every step of my planning, every careful word, every gesture designed to ensure he would emerge from this day with his innocence intact and his understanding of resilience subtly instilled within him. And the sun began to set, casting golden hues across the garden and the house. I allowed myself to stand still, to breathe deeply, to absorb the quiet beauty of the moment. The house now a silent witness to both past struggles and present triumphs. I felt a sense of completion that was both satisfying and liberating, that every tear shed, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had culminated in a day that honored both pain and joy, that in doing so I had not only reclaimed a physical space, but also reclaimed my own narrative, my own power, my own right to exist in peace and dignity. I walked slowly through the rooms one last time, noting the subtle traces of laughter left behind, the warmth lingering in the air, the faint echoes of voices and smiles. I felt the profound weight of accomplishment, knowing that I had transformed the house from a repository of memories into a monument of empowerment that would remain in my heart long after its sale, that the act of putting the house on the market was more than a financial decision. It was a symbolic assertion of freedom, a final chapter of reclamation, and a testament to the endurance of love and resilience. And as I finally settled in the living room, watching the soft light fade through the windows and the shadows stretch across the familiar walls, I allowed myself to reflect on the journey, the path from betrayal to triumph, the careful orchestration of events, the quiet victories achieved in subtle ways, and I felt the sweet satisfaction of justice served gracefully and with dignity. The knowledge that I had not only survived but transformed adversity into power, into serenity, into liberation, and I whispered softly to myself a vow that would carry me forward, that no one would ever again diminish my light or my worth, that the past had been acknowledged, honored, and released, and that the future was mine to shape with love, strength, and unwavering resolve. And as darkness settled over the house and the garden, and the last remnants of the day faded into memory, I felt a profound sense of peace, a deep satisfaction, a quiet but undeniable triumph, knowing that betrayal had been met with grace, strength, and reclamation, that the story of pain had been transformed into a story of empowerment, that the mother who had endured had emerged victorious, her dignity intact, her spirit unbroken, her heart full of love, joy, and quiet, sweet satisfaction that would carry her and her son into a future defined not by shadows but by the radiant light of resilience and liberation.